Five, four, three, two, one. Hi, I'm John Miglosh for the Wisconsin DMA. Another 4 inches of snow today, and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. I should show some screenshots or something out there from the snow, but I won't. I'll spare you. So I was all excited about Audi, who was putting up this. They put up this Audi Challenges Electric Vehicle Misconceptions. Audi of America is launching a campaign challenging common misconceptions, and the spot's intention is to debunk myths about electric vehicles' range, charging infrastructure, and performance. And I'm all excited. Consumer education is critical to the electric vehicle adoption. Hey, I'm good with electric cars, except that they're running on coal. You know, they're more expensive, and it seems like they're more reliable. I think that's probably true. I read an interesting article on a Tesla owner that set a new transcontinental record in his Tesla and hardly touched the steering wheel going across America, and also did nothing to prepare it. And they just said, "Give it a try." And he stopped at the I'm trying to remember the name of it. Anyway, some hotel chain, and they'd have a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner, and off they go again while the car charged. So it worked really well, I guess. And of course, there's going to be challenges, but if we can get the fourth gen nuclear going, and we can, fourth generation nuclear, incidentally, charges or consumes old, more dangerous nuclear fuel as its fuel first. And second, it's fail-safe. So unless you keep it running, it stops running. It just peters out. Think your car coasting. Okay? As opposed to a dead man switch. Yeah, okay. So let's run the Audi commercial. I was very excited to do it,
I know what you're thinking.
I was kind of disappointed.
Electric. It's not for you. And you're probably right. Electric just doesn't have enough range. It will never survive the winter. Everyone knows water and electricity don't mix. No more hanging out here either. And charging stations? Good luck finding one of those. Electric just can't keep up. So, maybe an electric car isn't for you after all. Or is it?
And there we go. So it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting some actual education rather than a couple of screen clips, but that's kind of the way marketers do it. 3-second shots. Okay, so now let's get to the meat of the show. Senator Markey proposes privacy bill requiring opt-in consent to data collection. And of course, one of the challenges, as we pointed out last week on the spy connection, if you're going to communicate covertly, you have to first communicate. You have to figure out the communication mechanism before you can do the communication. Well, opt-in is a little like that. In GDPR, if you send out an email saying, "Would you like to opt in before this legislation gets enacted," you were potentially guilty of the GDPR Act. So it's problematic. I was talking with a client's compliance manager. Actually, we were exchanging emails, and they said, "Are you ready to delete all of the stuff, that people might want deleted?" And I said, "Well, the problem is that what people want is to not get more catalogs than they want. And the challenge is that once we delete them, we can't prevent them from getting more catalogs. If we keep their name, we can prevent them getting more catalogs or email. But if we don't keep it, we can't." And this is what these legislators don't realize. They don't realize that privacy can be enhanced targeting can be enhanced by data, it can also be abused. So anyway, here's the Privacy Bill of Rights, which prohibit companies from using data in ways that discriminate on factors like race, religion, and gender. And the hard part about that is that almost all targeted advertising discriminates on factors like race, religion, and gender. The backbone of Prism, the backbone of what I do, is based on census data and the neighborhood you live in, the zip code. It's not very private, but if you live in certain zip codes, we know that you're high income. We don't know what race you are, but we know the percentage of race in your neighborhood. And, in some, I'm trying to think, race rarely works as an indicator per se, because we're rarely working at the household level. But race in a neighborhood might work. I've seen products work with a high black percentage and a high income percentage. So at the edges of the downtown area, you'll have a much higher black percentage than you would, say, out in the country where I live. But the income may be higher in the urban area. So you get the combination of high income and black gives you an urban. We had a client that had a hospital product or occupational therapy, and their best customers were in high black areas. And it turned out that the teaching hospitals, the big downtown hospitals, were located in highly urban areas, just off downtown. And so now is that, I don't know. If you can't use those factors, how do you target my interests? And yet we want to pass a law like that. Discriminatory data uses out of bounds, puts discriminatory data out of bounds and tells companies they can only collect information that is necessary. And that's another question. What is necessary information? We don't know. Anyway, on the next note, I thought this was funny because, right alongside this, in the same online magazine, podcasters listeners skew mostly male. Most listen at home. Actually, when you weigh all the numbers, it's not very much male or female. But when you get to spoken word podcasts, they skew 73% to 23% female. So if somebody's just reading an article, a very, very high skew, which I did think was interesting. Now, are we allowed to use that? Are we allowed to target women for music podcasts and target men for spoken podcasts? No, we wouldn't be. So how we use data is going to be really challenging. Really, really challenging. We can't know it and we can't use it. And on that note, let's move on to the last article. And I don't know how to say this. Publicis, it looks like to me, but I'm sure it's French, so it's not. Publicis, something like that. I just kind of that's when I try to speak French. Bonjour. Just keep the mouth closed. Keep it forward. Anyway, so they're buying Epsilon. They pretty much announced the deal is done. $4.4 billion. I think this is really interesting because, first of all, Epsilon and I have a long history where there was a magazine publisher that had put together a conglomeration of 800 titles, and they wanted a combined database. And they invited me to quote against Epsilon. And I tried to explain to them that the way they wrote the spec was going to be to homogenize. For example, fly fishermen had whether somebody had a passport on file, and that was one of their best predictive variables. In fishermen didn't have it, but had other variables, and they wanted to make it the least common denominator, which is just a terrible idea. I told them it was a terrible idea. I declined to bid. And 2 years later, the magazine company was out of business. Not all the magazines went out of business, but the conglomerate did. I don't think Epsilon put them out of business, but it's interesting when you have lots and lots and lots of data. It doesn't necessarily make you more creative. So Epsilon isn't going to be, like reporting to one of their divisions. It's going to be across. It's going to service their agencies across the board. This company is their elevator pitch is that we help businesses make the transition to digital. Okay, so my guess is it's going to keep Epsilon way busy because they all of a sudden will have way more clients than they had and global. So if you're an Epsilon client, you may want to look for a more local, maybe a smaller vendor that will pay very close attention to you because you're now going to be a really small fish in a really big pond. Okay, but I thought it was really perceptive why they did it. The CEO said you can have all the knowledge of the consumer in the world, not if they pass these laws, and all the technology to reach them, but if the content and the idea you're delivering is not right for them, you won't have any impact. And that's why probably creative is still more powerful than who you put it in front of, because the actual buying decisions are a relatively small number. But you maybe, like Audi, you can change perceptions. We want to put data at the core of platforms that will create ideas and set goals that will accelerate transformation. That's what they do. They transform old advertising platforms to digital across the world. With Epsilon, that's exactly what we're doing. Okay, so anyway, and this is a French multinational advertising public relations company, one of the oldest and largest marketing communication companies in the world. Okay.